it's just a marvelous thing to see people come out and with the enthusiasm you have, and obviously for the intent that is in your heart to come and share with us tonight. Just a wonderful evening of patriotism and love and concern for one another. Do we need more volume? Come on, Charla, turn her up. How's that? How's that? Much better. I don't like this microphone. Oh, this was mobile. Wait a minute. Can we do it? Do you need this?
Do I need that?
Yeah,
Not necessarily.
because it's right in the way of the microphone.
Oh yeah, that's better. We can see it, yeah.
You can see my tie better. It's an old grandpa tie, that's what my wife said. Still a little sharp on the volume. Charlotte, can you turn it down just a tiny bit? Okay. Again, just thanks for coming out tonight. It's wonderful to see everybody here. Much will transpire tonight, I assure you. It's going to be a great and wonderful program. My name is Albert Montoya, and I represent the committee that put this Face of Freedom conference together this evening. And it's just a pleasure and a good experience to have worked with the people that we have, and I'm just so pleased with everything that has come together. We'd like to open singing a song. It's on the back of your program, America the Beautiful. And Charlotte Christie is our pianist, and Kate Martineau is our chorister. And when they're finished, we'll have an invocation by Brian Hyde, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Jim Kern will lead us in that, and we'll go to that point. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, We're very grateful to come before Thee this evening as friends and family and neighbors, as lovers of liberty and as servants to its cause. Father, we acknowledge that all of the things that make our lives good and that bring us happiness are gifts from Thee, especially the precious gift of liberty. And it's with that common cause that we unite to learn, to lift one another, and to be edified in the messages that we will hear tonight. Father, it's the desire of our hearts to be instruments in Thy hand, to help preserve and perpetuate the blessings which those who came before us paid such a dear price to secure on our behalf, that generations that follow us will likewise know that we have done our part. We ask Thy Spirit to be upon our speakers tonight and our presenters, and also to be upon each of us, to open our eyes and our hearts that we may understand and recognize what we may do individually as well as collectively. And this we ask in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you who have helped with the music this evening and the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go right into our program now. Our first presenter will be Tian Finicum, And I'm not going to give any bio on any of the individuals tonight. We'll let them take a minute or two at the beginning. So Tian will, I'm really struggling here. Tian will then be followed by Dr. Harold Pease. And Harold Pease is a fairly newcomer here in our area. And I'm not going to give any bio about him. I'll let him talk. And then, of course, our keynote speaker will be Guy Finicum. And then we'll go to that point at this time. So, Tian, please.
Okay, so I guess he wanted us to give a little bio. I'm pretty sure you all know who I am. I'm Lavoy Finicum's daughter. I'm his youngest. Pull it closer. Can you hear me better now? Yeah, we good? Okay. No?
We put those speakers up a little bit higher. Yeah. That bar, just let's put one of those chairs. Turn it down just a minute while I.
You're going to have to pull it over more. Probably pull it over more, a little bit. Oh, maybe we can push it over.
Can we move it out to the side a little bit?
Yeah, well, how about come on right here?
Yeah, they've got the screen set for the projector.
Set for that. Yeah, we'll
If you want to use that for this side, I don't know if you want to. But Can you hear me? No? Yes?
Let them have it.
I'm not a loudspeaker though.
Yeah, you are. Now they hear you.
Good? Okay. So I wasn't sure what to talk about, but I want to talk about my dad a little bit, I guess. My dad was my best friend, and if there was anything I needed to talk to him about, whether it was playing ball or something spiritual, something political, he was the one I'd go to first. I would hop on his bed and I'd talk to him for hours on end about anything and everything. And I never thought that my dad would be gone and out of my life. So when it came to learning about the Constitution and our freedoms, I didn't take my own personal time that I should have to ensure that I retained everything that he took his time to teach me. So as this fight for freedom is put upon my shoulders and the shoulders of all the patriots of this country with a greater burden after my father's death and those who were involved in the Oregon standoff up there who are in prison now, I've come to the realization that we have a great duty to do to ensure that their legacy isn't wasted and that they're not forgotten. I believe we need to teach and we need to bring others to the light of everything. We don't need to just sit and be idle and wait for someone else to do the job and get down in the dirt to get everything done. There's a quote that my dad shared with me a few years ago, and it says, "Of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 8 are nothing but targets. 9 are real fighters. We are lucky to have them. They make the battle. Ah, but the one of them is a warrior, and he will bring the others back." When he told me this quote, he said, "Tian, you got to be the one. You got to be the one who shows everyone which way to go and what principles this country was founded on." And I guess that's what I'm here to do tonight, is to challenge all those who are listening to me and to become the one, to stand up and teach yourself. Take the time out of your day to learn what the Constitution is, what liberty and what freedom is, and to take those 80 who are targets and then 10 that shouldn't even be there and make them the 9 that are warriors in this fight for freedom. Make them so that they can make a difference in this country and and just know the knowledge, know it in your heart. So when you know it in your heart that it's right, it is easier to teach, and it's sincere. And I know that if we take the time to do this and to step up to the plate like we should as patriots of this country, that we'll see this country as it was when it was founded. It'll be free, it'll have liberty, and we'll feel it. We'll be able to breathe free air. That was always my dad's dream, was to have his children breathe free air. And I want to make that dream come true. I thank you all for coming, and I thank you for showing your support in this fight for freedom. Please step up to the plate with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tian. Thank you, Albert, for staging this opportunity for us to express ourselves with respect to freedom. I am a political scientist. I teach political science in California. There's very few that have been tested every day on the concepts of freedom more than I. I feel like I've been surrounded by socialists most of my adult life. It's been good for me because I have fire in my belly, and that's what we're asking you to have. And that fire has been tested. Often you find yourself standing all by yourself. only because it's right. I've been given 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to speak fast and use big words. I may well be the only political science professor that you know of that is truly a constitutionalist in the tradition of the Founding Fathers. Benjamin Franklin was approached exiting the Constitutional Convention and asked, "What form of government would you leave us?" His answer is instructive for us today. A republic, not a democracy, a republic. And then he paused and said, "If you can keep it." The burden is upon the citizenry in a free government. We've always had the other form of government, government from the top, telling us what to do, think, and everything else. And that may well be suited for some. But most of us have something inside of us that says this isn't enough. I need the opportunity to make my own decisions for myself. And the normal way of transitioning government was a king had to be taken out by somebody that had the power to take him out. So you might go from generation to generation without a possibility of a change until somebody can. But you still don't change your form of government when that happens. When that happens, you just have a new king with a new name, a new face. Freedom is rare in the history of the world. We can count on one hand the times when we could say that man was truly free. The Athenian experience, the Gupta Empire in India, the Han Empire in China, our own experience with freedom. And if you are LDS, we had some even after Mosiah. But it's always been free, or rare, I'm sorry, but it's never been easy, and it never was without some kind of consequence, usually bloodshed. The way you stay free is to never elevate to a higher level that which can be resolved at a lesser level. That requires the citizenry to be alert, be active, be informed, and be participating at all times. And when you have a government that you have elected, that you elected because they would keep the Constitution as it was designed, and then they change, they need to be removed from power as quickly as you can do it. I can name a U.S. senator that fits this category. I worked for him many years ago for a short period of time. I was assigned to the Constitutional Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. Senate, and he was a fighter. He was a lion. But I've watched him over the years, and I've watched the fire in the belly go. And you have to keep fire in the belly if you're going to keep freedom. It is not free. Never elevate to a higher level that which can be resolved at a lesser level means that we resolve things as individuals first, and as families second, and as the smallest level of government, your city, then your county, and then your state of Utah. I almost said California. I'm so used to saying this. That would have been offensive. And never pass it on to a higher level if it can be resolved at a lesser level. That is the key. Because once you pass it to a higher level, you rarely, if ever, get it back. So you better be awfully certain if you're passing something to a higher level that it cannot be resolved at a lesser level, no matter what, no matter if there will be federal funding for it. That shouldn't even be a concern. Freedom requires citizen government. Once moved to a higher level, it seldom returns. Freedom begins with you. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? No longer do we have time to risk bad choices. I have watched freedom deteriorate for 40 years. I've had to apologize to my students for my grandfathers not holding as closely as they should have to the Constitution. I've had to apologize for my parents not holding as closely as they should have to the Constitution. And the further away from the Constitution you get, the harder the journey to get back to it. And they use as past practice the distortions of the Constitution against you in trying to get back to the Constitution. So if you're not standing now, what are you leaving the next generation? And the day may come when we can't get back to the Constitution because we lost so much of its original intent. We must elect those with real understanding of the Constitution. I'm a state delegate, honored to be. I've just been in the state for 5 months, and anyway, I'm not sure how it happened, but it did. And I'm proud to have that distinction, but I did receive a phone call this past week of a certain individual wanting a certain position, and I asked him where he was on the Constitution, and what part of the Constitution, when he gets that office, is he going to work first to get us back to original intent. Well, he said, well, I read it last week for the first time. And I'm grateful that he read it last week for the first time. But he should not be running for elected office if he does not know that document frontwards and inside and out and upside down. And that's our problem. We are electing people. Now, even if they're constitutionalists, and I've advocated for many years for people to no longer call themselves conservatives. Call yourself a constitutionalist. The other side doesn't even know how to deal with a constitutionalist. They do know how to deal with a conservative. And you've already lost half the war if you're arguing that you're a conservative. You argue that you're a constitutionalist, and then they have to argue why they are, and if they aren't, it shows up real fast. But we don't have time anymore to make bad choices. Every choice we make now really, really counts. We must elect those with fire in their bellies for the Constitution. And if we're electing somebody that doesn't have the fire in their belly, then we wonder why they get to Washington, D.C., and they forget all about all the promises they made to us. I've lived in Washington, D.C. for a short period of time, but it was long enough to see the enormous pressure. You have to stand alone often, and there's very few that can do that. Ron Paul was one of them that could, but you have to stand alone often, only because it's right. It is time to save the Constitution. Now, please join us. And we want to do it through education. We want to do it by being very, very vigilant, by making certain that everyone that we put in place of power doesn't have to vacillate when he is up there, he or she. And returning to your theme, Tiana, you've got to be the one. We're counting on you. And if we are all the one, and we're united as the one, we will be able to save this document. I leave this message with you. I believe I've consumed my time. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you and express my love for liberty.
Wow. To follow somebody that's cute and smart, and then somebody that's really smart, intimidates me just a little bit. That's kind of lower than me, but we'll work with it. Okay. Before I jump into what I'm going to say, I'm going to say some other stuff first. The first thing I want to mention is there's a really wonderful book. There's a lot of really good material out there on helping us to understand the Constitution, where it comes from, and where those principles are, and how they work, and the impact they have on us. But there's a really awesome book that has been written by Cleon Skousen. It's called The 5,000-Year Leap. Many of you may have a copy of that. If you don't have a copy of that, and you want a copy of that, you will have a copy of that when you leave tonight, courtesy of Jefferson Institute, and Glenn Kimber came to me and said, you know, if I wanted everybody to have a copy of that, he would help make that happen, and he has. So at the end of the day, if you want one of those, they're sitting right over there on the table at the right. There should be enough for everybody that doesn't have one that would like to take one home with them. So thank you, Dr. Kimber, and your generosity. So the other thing I want to say before I start talking today is when the founders of this nation first came together and drafted the Declaration of Independence, they started that document by recognizing the author of liberty. They referred to the laws of nature and nature's God. And I just want to tell you today that if we try to go about this in any other way, we will fail. I just want you to have that on your minds and on your hearts as I speak to you today. And my prayer is that what I have to say today will be in harmony with that great author of all liberty. But I am just a man. And subject to all the flaws of mortality that every one of us are. So today I want to talk, starting off with, and I'm kind of at a disadvantage. I can't really look at my screen over there. I think I can see it good enough to know what's up there. But I want to start by talking a little bit more about my brother, and I'm so grateful to have my niece Tian up here on the stage with me today. What an example she is to young people around the world. She probably spoke more to the heart of my brother than I'm going to be able to. But I still think that I have something to share about his life and who he was that will be of value to all of you, regardless of where you stand on your various opinions. And there are many opinions. If you look at this, one of the reasons I chose this slide, there's a couple of my brother's grandchildren there, and I think they're at a rally, and they're holding up some signs, and one is about passing the torch, I think, to the next generation, and then the other one says, I am Lavoie. And I want to use that phrase, I am Lavoie, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the real person that Lavoie was. There are people who are here tonight because of Lavoie. And there are people who are not here tonight because of Lavoie. And what you need to realize is, whenever you stand up and make a stand, there will be people who disagree with you. There will be people who misunderstand you, and there will be people who will intentionally misrepresent you. And, Lavoie was subject to all of those things. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide there. I had an opportunity. My brother was one to kind of shock me from time to time, and I know that early, right there at the first of the year, I came home one day and my wife said to me, do you know where your brother is? And I says, well, what's he done now? And she says, well, he's up in Oregon and he's taken over a federal building. I said, oh my gosh. So I had to start trying to figure out what was going on. I looked to the media and I even got more worried and tried to find out what I could. And then the opportunity was presented to me by some friends that I didn't know yet who made it possible for me to go up there. And I thought, I need to get up there and I need to talk some sense into my brother and try to bring him home with me. I was grateful for them making that trip possible for me. I went up there, and on January 8th, I was able to walk onto the reserve there, where Lavoy and Ryan and Ammon and many of their friends were occupying a public facility. And it didn't take me very long to sitting down with my brother to realize that I didn't know the whole picture. And as he spoke to me, some things changed in my heart in a very profound way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's four things I want to speak to. I first want to talk to you about who my brother was, really, the one I knew. Not the terrorist and not the hero, but the real guy. I want to talk about why he did what he did. I want to talk about one thing that made him extraordinary. And then my greatest prayer is that I can give you something. Maybe you can learn from his life, that you can take into your own life, not to become who he was or to do what he did, but to do what you're destined to do. So, to speak about my brother, first of all, I had the privilege of being his younger brother by 3 years. That means I got to see a side of him that nobody else knew. I think one of the reasons my brother opposed tyranny so greatly is because he had been a great tyrant and he knew that it wasn't a good thing to be. I also learned from him that when the tyrant makes the rules to the game, you are destined to lose. And I lost a lot of games throughout my childhood. I guess the thing I owe my brother the greatest debt of gratitude to is he really taught me humility. And I kind of joke about that. But he was a very formative person in my life, and I am so grateful for that. But he was a person who was just like every one of you. He struggled in his life. When he started out his life, I don't know what my next slide is. Let's take a look at it. Okay, there he is. Lavoy Finicum, an ordinary man with a great big family. And that's an old picture. If you look at the size of Tian there right up at the front, this is a few years ago, and it's a much bigger family now. Quite a few more spouses are married into that family. And how many grandchildren right now, Tian? 19? And more coming. So it's an amazing family. And you look at that and you think, wow, I wish I could have a family like that. What an amazing family. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the work that he went through to get to that point in his life. See, my brother was always a great person. And when he, to me, little brother, of course he was a great person. I watched him play basketball in high school, and he was shorter than me by quite a bit. But to this day, I can't see him as being shorter than me because he's always, in my mind, he's my big brother. But, I learned a lot of things. He was really a dedicated person. He worked hard in high school. He worked whatever he put his mind to. He did a really good job. I think that was most illustrative when I watched him playing basketball. He practiced. He set goals. He put in his time. My dad had built a basketball put a basketball standard up out in our backyard and put some asphalt oil cake down for us so the ball would bounce a little better than it did in the sand back there. And I remember waking up every summer, in the mornings every summer, listening to that basketball out there on the court, hitting that pavement. over and over again. And then you'd hear that sound, that distinctive sound when it hit that plywood backboard. And that's the sound I'd wake up to in the mornings. And the reason is because he knew if he wanted to be a good basketball player, he had to put in his time. So he was a diligent person. He was a hardworking person. He was a person he was well liked in high school. He was a friend to all. One of the things that stood out to me was often you find the person, or a few of them, in your teenage years who just don't have very good friends. I remember there was a guy Gus, there's several of individuals that fit this mold, but struggled a lot with friends. He's a great guy, but nobody took the time to really know who he was and really understand him. And he told me the other day, Lavoy was my best friend. And that was something that I always appreciated about him. I tried to follow in that mold, to that example that he set, to be a friend to the one who doesn't have a friend. And Lavoy was that kind of person. Well, I keep talking about his virtues, and I got to tell you, there's more to him than that. He struggled a great deal in his life in his own ways. As he started out to have a family, and he really loved family. That was one of his highest priorities in his life. He married a really awesome lady who was, should I say, as stubborn as him. And in that marriage was very important to Lavoy because it taught him a lot of things. I think that's where he gained a lot of his humility that he carried with him later on in his life, because when he married Kelly, she probably represented the unmovable object, and Lavoy was the unstoppable force. And there was a lot of times that when they collided, it was a real collision. Not in the physical sense, but he struggled greatly in that marriage. And after bringing some really wonderful children into the world and getting a family started, that marriage failed. And Lavoy was devastated. Never thought that would be something that happened to him. And I want you to think about your own life. How many plans did you have to turn out a certain way? And it didn't go that way. He was brokenhearted. I remember him saying, one time we had a family reunion, he didn't want to go. He says, I don't want to go and be the family's first divorce, he said. That was a big family too, and it was hard for him. He struggled in other areas of his life, very talented, very intelligent. But he would pick a direction and start working on something, and it wouldn't seem to fit for him, and so he would pull back, and then he would try another angle. And he married again, and that marriage also struggled and fell apart after a very short period of time. Not until two of his next wonderful daughters came into the world. So when I say these marriages failed, they didn't fail. They just didn't turn out the way he wanted, because with each one, something amazing happened. He learned, he grew. He was humbled over and over again, and he set back. And probably the most awesome thing was those children that came into this world, because they are amazing, each one of them. He struggled financially. He invested and tried some things out, and even got to a point where with child support and some court costs and some of his plans not turning out the way he wanted, he ended up going bankrupt. If you go on Wikipedia and try to read about Lavoy, they figure that's probably the most important information to put up there. It's like one of the first things you'll read. Don't go there for your information, please. he persisted. He kept trying. He kept putting himself forward. He had a great work ethic. And he met an amazing lady by the name of Jeanette. And I think that's where LaVoy's life got traction. Not that it was a smooth, easy, amazing start, because I think he married his match once again in being a very powerful, strong-willed person. But he was wiser this time, and after bumping his head and figuring things out and trying, he and Jeanette made an amazing marriage together. And what was really cool about LaVoy is he had felt like a failure as a father, because in his divorces, he had not always been able to be there for his children like he wanted. He had not always had everything work out right. But in the last years of his life, because he persisted and he continued to refine himself, to pursue those principles that he had learned in his youth, and he had continued to study and come to understand more greatly throughout his life, he at the end of his life had that family that he'd always dreamed of, and more. He had a better family than he'd ever dreamed of. And they all came together, and I had the privilege of spending a lot of time in his home just after his death, just right there in the middle of that family. And they are an amazing family, a family that any father would be so grateful to have. So, I hope one thing you can learn from that is just because the road doesn't go the way we planned, and just because we stumbled and fallen, get up, keep moving, keep going. You all have those marvelous blessings in your future, whatever age you may be, and persist. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's the big one. Why in heck did he do what he did? All right, to answer this, I want to give a little bit of background. Okay, LaVoy's Ranch, his home, headquartered out there in Cane Beds, not far from where my grandparents homesteaded on the Arizona Strip. And so that's been the home to LaVoy's family. When it got to him, he was the third generation there. Now we're on to the fifth generation in that area with his family. I expect many more. But the closest town to where we live there, the town where I went to high school, and LaVoy didn't go to high school there. He went to school in Page. My dad was a highway worker, and we lived on a highway camp for the first, on the Navajo Reservation for the first number of years of our lives. And LaVoy finished high school there, but close to the ranch, Fredonia was kind of the hometown, and so we always felt like Fredonia was home. That's where our parents had gone to high school and had met and married. And I want to talk a little bit about that town. Back in 1982, when I was in high school there, Fredonia was a little town. It's a small town, still a small town. But in that town, there was a big sawmill, Kaibab Industries. And Kaibab Industries produced a lot of jobs. People from as far as 70 miles in all directions would come there to work. And it provided income and production for a lot of families. People from as far away as Page to the east, St. George to the west, Panguitch to the north, and down on the Navajo Reservation to the south, and the Paiute Reservation there close by. A lot of people worked there. And it was a tax-producing, value-producing industry. There were also around in that area, I believe somewhere in the 70s, they built a refinery, an oil refinery in Fredonia, and more people were employed there. And then in the 80s, they discovered some real rich uranium deposits out on the Arizona Strip. And so the miners came in. First it was Energy Fuels. And so we had opportunities with the mines, opportunities with the refinery, and opportunities with the lumber mill, which continued to be the biggest employer. And it was quite a productive town, one of those little towns that contribute a lot to this nation. And if you were to go to Fredonia today, there is no lumber mill. There is no refinery. With the stroke of a pen, Ken Salazar declared that the last mine that was opened on the Strip, when it plays out, all those other uranium deposits are off limits. No more mining on the Arizona Strip. I grew up in a town where fathers went to work and they provided for their families and they contributed to the building up of this country. And now I live in a town where the biggest employer is the local school district. And probably the National Forest Service, neither of which produces a dime in wealth for this country, but consumes. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing schools. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying they don't produce tax dollars, they spend tax dollars. And everybody makes a living the best they can, however they can. There's a few little small family businesses that people have tried to come together and create something for themselves. But a large contingent of our community lives off of government assistance. And I have to ask, what happened? How did that happen? When I had the opportunity to learn a little bit about Harney County up in Oregon, they had the same story as the town that I grew up in. See, Lavoie knew what would happen when we start to let things get out of control, when frivolous lawsuits are left unchecked and even supported and encouraged by agencies. When government agencies start making all the decisions and start imposing restrictions and standards, and for whatever reason, it starts to choke off the people. And, Lavoie's ranch was out on the Strip near Mount Trumbull. His southern border was the Grand Canyon National Park. He was the furthest south rancher up against that park right there. And if you cross the park boundaries, you look and, wow, there's a lot of land, a lot of rangeland before you even drop off the rim down into the first bench in the canyon. Lavoie's ranch didn't used to be the furthest south ranch. I believe the guy's name was Jens McCormick that ran that down there, wasn't it, Dad? Jens McCormick had a ranch down there. And Jens and his family had that ranch in their family a number of years. And, well, we had a president by the name of Teddy Roosevelt that thought we ought to have some national parks out here. And so he just wrote something down and everybody went along with it. I don't know how that all happened, but it did. And that's a discussion to be had at another time. But at that time, they said, it's okay. You guys can keep ranching there. We're not going to take away your ranches. But Jens, I believe he was the one that was told, I think when you die, your kids don't need your ranch. You die, it's ours now. And he was gone. So, Lavoie had a great working relationship with the Bureau of Land Management there. And he really liked his range cons, the people that he worked with. There wasn't a problem there. Matter of fact, a lot of people say, well, the BLM is doing a lot of good for the ranchers. And Lavoie said, but wait a minute. He looked south and said, what happened to those ranchers? And now this ranch that I have is now on a national monument, one of the new national monuments. But the ranchers can stay there. But see, the problem is Lavoie said, if you give people the power to do good, when they decide not to do good, they have the power to do bad. It's not that whether they were good or bad, it was whether they should have the power. See, a lot of times we say, it's okay to give that person power because they're a good person. We can trust them. But what we need to understand is no one lives forever, and somebody comes along and replaces them eventually. And it's amazing, when you put a position of power, who gets drawn to those? Because there are people in this world that crave power. So he decided, as he delved into his studies of principles of liberty and learned more about the Constitution and read the writings of the founders and fathers and people that came before them, John Locke, Blackstone, and such, he realized that we had a problem. But I think what really woke him up is when he met Cliven, who just to the south had realized that the game he was playing 20 years ago was designed for him to lose. And he decided to quit playing the game and made a stand. And I think that woke up Lavoie, and he started looking deeper into those principles. And he, in his own heart, in his own studies, realized or decided that he had to start living more consistent with what he believed. And he believed, it was his feeling, that the government had become lawless. Now, he wasn't a great constitutional scholar, though I'm sure he knows it better than probably 99.6%. Did you know most statistics are made up right on the spot, like 94% of them? I'm sure he knew the Constitution more than the vast majority of our elected officials knew it. But he read in there, but he also was a student of natural law. And he looked at those principles that were codified in the original document of the Constitution, and he said, we're not living by those. We've thrown them away. And if you look at the ills that trouble our country today, just about all of them can be traced right back to our abandonment of those natural laws that our founding fathers spoke of. And he felt like we needed to get back to those, and so it was his feeling that the best thing that he could do was start to live by them, just outright start live by them. And that's why he did what he did. And so he respectfully ended his relationship with the BLM and started to do things his own way. And then when he heard about the Hammonds up in Harney County and what was happening to them, he felt like it was his obligation to go stand beside his brother. He felt like if I don't stand with somebody, who will stand with me? We have that responsibility. So he went up there, and that's how he found himself in Harney County. To speak of those principles that he most focused on when he would talk with me, he would hearken back to the Declaration of Independence, and he would quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Some people wonder what that pursuit of happiness means, but all you got to do is a little bit of research and you find that That means that we had the right to the product of our labor. In other words, our property. In other words, a man can't be free if somebody comes and takes everything they worked for all day. That makes them a slave. So life, liberty, and property. And he talked about those things being important. And he identified how those things were upheld in the structure of the Constitution and protected. He always said, you know, if I don't have the power to go take my neighbor's stuff, and the government derives its power from the people, can me and my neighbors get together and rightfully go take something that belongs to one of our other neighbors? He said, you know, the cool thing about the Constitution is it's not about the masses, it's about the one. He would often refer to the parable of the Savior about the Good Shepherd, about the 90 and 9. It's the individual that we need to stand up for. It's what he felt like he was doing when he went to Oregon. You know, there's a lot of discussion and debate about how they went about things and why they did what they did. I think the only way to really know what was going on up there is to have gone up there. I couldn't have seen it or understood it. What I did come away realizing is that the media's representation was not at all what their intent was. But he also knew the game he was playing. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, no, back up right there. Yeah, that one. So he knew what game he was playing, and he knew that when he took a stand as hard as he did, he was putting everything on the line. And one of the interviews that he did, I heard him say, you know, I think it was one with MSNBC. He said, I alone bear the responsibility for the choices that I'm making. And he was willing to bear that responsibility on his shoulders. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, what made him extraordinary? I want to get into this because I think this is the part that we want to learn from him. Now, I don't know why that slide makes him extraordinary, and I just put that slide up there because I really like it. One of his grandchildren there. Who is that, Jeanette? It's who? He's got so many they can't even agree. But I just love that picture because it really speaks to him. Lavoie loved children. He loved babies. You know, if somebody would walk into the room holding a baby, he would come up and, can I look? And if, you know, if it was appropriate, say, can I hold your child? And he'd hold it. And you just see his face light up. He had a concept of the value of human life, and he knew there was just nothing more pure in this life than a young baby. And you can see that in his eyes right there. Can you see how he felt about children? You know, and you know, one of the things that he felt like he had a responsibility to do was to be a caretaker of the society that children lived in. He knew that above all, he had to keep children safe. He had to keep it a society where they could grow up and pursue their dreams, where they had opportunity. But the one thing that made Lavoie most extraordinary was not his study so much, though that contributed, but it was his commitment to what he saw and understood to be right. Lavoie's greatest desire in his heart was to be faithful to his Creator, to his God. It was a very tender topic with him. And he was very forceful that I got to do the right thing. And he believed that he believed that Jesus Christ was the author of liberty. And he was a flawed man just like all of us. But he did his very best to find out what was right for him to do with the talents that he had been given. And then he committed to do that with his absolute whole soul. He was willing to sacrifice his all. And he came to the conclusion not many years ago that it was no longer time for him to hide in the background, but it was time for him to stand up and advocate for what he saw as the most precious gift that we hold as a country, and that is the cause of liberty. And he saw it slipping away, he felt it slipping away, and he felt like, you know what, I can no longer be silent. I got to stand up and say something. And so he did that. And as you all know, he gave the last full measure for that cause. Let's go to the next slide. I think that's the message that we want to learn from Lavoie, was he had figured out his path. He had assessed his talents. He had searched his heart. He had prayed. And he set his course. Now, one of the things that my brother and I often talked about when I'd sit with him is why he was doing what he was doing and why I wasn't doing what he was doing. And we came to an understanding and agreement between the two of us is because we had different missions in life and different talents and different abilities. See, your mission in life is very personal and very individual to you and you alone. Now, you probably will find like-minded people who you will naturally be drawn to pursue your talents. One of the very important discussions, probably one of the most important discussions my brother and I ever had. Because we weren't always seeing things eye to eye. We weren't always on the same page. But we realized that there was a powerful spirit of contention that wanted to divide me from my brother, wanted me to war with him, wanted me to fight with him. And when we'd sit down, it would attack us every time. The thing I love the most about my relationship with my brothers is we would never let it win. We would stay together. We would continue to talk. We would continue to listen to each other. We would continue to be respectful. It was the love that we had for each other that was able to carry us forward in that relationship when we disagreed. And I can't remember ever parting from a discussion with my brother since the early years when I was about 5. I can't remember parting from a discussion with my brother that what we didn't have a profound respect, an understanding of the other person, not always in 100% agreement about the course that we were following, but we shouldn't have been because we were different people with different talents, and my course was meant to be different than his. I think the last thing, the last message my brother ever gave me was, Guy, you were right. Be careful about contention. Because when we contend and start to try to force our will or our opinion on other people, we lose our power of influence. We drive from us that spirit of peace and love that will unite us. For years, do I have another slide or is that it? Let's just end there. That's good. I like that one. For years, people who love liberty, who love God, who love their neighbor, but particularly those who look to solve problems politically, they've come together, tried to create these unified groups, and they can get a little bit of momentum, and then they break down because of contention. See, people who have no love for liberty, they're not afraid of contention. They really don't have any profound principles that they've got to uphold. And so they'll ally with anybody. But no, us principled people, those of us who look to those principles of nature and nature's God, we hold on to those, and they're so important to us. But we can get locked up in a dangerous trap of pride where we think our view of liberty is the pure brand. And those guys that can't quite agree with our approach, man, they're just going to mess it up, and they're making it bad for all of us, and we need to contend against them and defeat their message. And, the people over there have often not been too worried about us because they say, hey, they'll take each other down. We don't got to worry about them because they can't stay unified. Well, the reason we cannot stay unified is because we think we have to win. We have to present our ideas in a way that others agree with us. And I'm here to tell you today that your most powerful tool that you will bring forward in the cause of liberty or any other worthy endeavor that you start on is the power of humility. Coupled closely with power of humility is that power of love, unconditional brotherly love. They're really one and the same. Because as soon as you start to depart humility, where you respect your neighbor and you listen to them kindly and carefully, you cease to act in accordance with that foundational principle. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and you elevate yourself above another person. You see your opinion as more valuable than their opinion. Now, your opinion may be closer in alignment with correct principles than theirs, but that does not make you one whit better than them. And it doesn't entitle you to disrespect them. The only way that we will ever restore this nation is founded under those principles of the Constitution, those principles of natural law that our founders identified. The only way we will return to that is if each one of us in our own individual hearts honor those principles in everything we do. Our problems will not be solved from Washington, and that is a fact, not just my opinion. Our problems will not be solved in Washington, not by Washington. Our problems won't even be solved at the state level, and not even at the county level. Our problems in this world, in the cause of liberty, and anything else that is good, and all that is good, will be solved first within ourselves. Liberty has never come from the top down. It has always grown from the ground up, from the hearts of the individuals. And so often we've wasted our resources and our power and burned ourselves out by trying to effect change in the wrong location, beyond the sphere of our influence. People made great efforts to expand the sphere of their influence by speaking loud and crafting clever speeches. But the change, the power, has always been first with our own heart, and then in our own home, with our children, and those that we love closest to us. That is where we begin. If you, like me, have laid awake at nights listening or pondering, wondering, what can I do? Things are not well. All is not well in America right now. What do I do? What can I do? Your first step is to get on your knees before your Maker and ask Him, what should I do? What do you ask of me, God? What is my gift? What is my talent that I have to offer to humanity? What do you want me to do? And you've got to make that the most important first thing in your life. And then when you start to feel that, and it may not come like a flash and bolt and lightning and you got it, maybe it will. Everybody's different. But when you start to feel it, then you need to start acting on that. And I guarantee you the first actions that you'll need to take are going to be with your wife, your husband, with your children, with your grandchildren, your brothers, your sisters. That's where it starts. And from there, then you can reach out to your community, your greater community, maybe your neighborhood, your friends and your acquaintances. And you know, if you get that going, you might roll it clear up to your city government. And then your county. And that's where freedom comes from. That's how it grows. Now I know that people are varied in so many ways, and probably none greater than our own individual idea of who our Creator is. And that's all right. I'm not asking anybody to believe just like I believe. But I am sharing with you the strong belief that I have is that your Creator knows you. And your Creator didn't put you here by accident. He placed you very deliberately and very carefully to do something amazing. And maybe nobody in the world will notice that amazing thing, and that does not matter. It is absolutely important. Some of you know that you're following your mission in life and you feel like you're on that path. Some of you may be struggling and wondering where that is for you. It's a struggle for everyone that sets their foot on this path, and that's okay. You likely won't know the end from the beginning. You probably only know a few steps ahead of you, and that's okay. But if you'll continue to call, petition your Creator, petition God for help, He will show you, He will guide you. And you will start to realize, you will start to see the power of the circle of your influence grow. It'll shock you how it will start to grow. And how many people will want to hear what you have to say. And how many people will naturally start to unify with you, not because you convinced them and talked them into it and recruited them, but because they like the path that you're on and they want to join with you. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to rise here in your little neighborhood or your family or with a little coalition of people you've met from other places. Another group over here will start to rise. Another group over here will start to rise. And as we keep our eye on the conductor, okay, I like the analogy of a symphony orchestra. There is one conductor that leads that orchestra. And every instrument in that orchestra keeps their eye on that conductor and does not look side to side. Because if the piccolos and the timpanis start arguing about what notes to play and who's doing the wrong thing, you are going to have chaos and disunity. But if the horns and the flutes and the woods, the percussions, all watch the conductor, you have harmony. And you have people doing things over here that these people could never do. And people over here doing things that none of the rest can do. And they will come together under the leadership of the author of liberty. It is not too late for liberty. Matter of fact, I do believe with all my heart that the very best days of this nation and this world are just over the horizon. But if we want to be a part of that, and we want to experience that, we have to do our part. I want to tell you how much I appreciate all of you coming here tonight. I want to tell you how much I love each one of you. And I love your love for liberty. Unfortunately, I can't quote Lavoie's quote that his favorite one. I was going to copy it down and bring it up here with me so I could read it, and I didn't do that. But it's simply the essence is this. The fight for liberty is God's fight. And if you stand for liberty, you'll stand with God. And if you fill your heart with love for your neighbor, those who agree and those who disagree with you, you'll have a marvelous experience on this journey. I pray God's blessings upon all of you in your own individual journey, in your own mission, whatever it may be. And may God bless America. Thank you.
I can't imagine not being here tonight. That would be awful to have missed this. It's just wonderful. Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Tian, and thanks, Dr. Peace. And thank each of you for being here tonight. It's just wonderful. We've asked everyone to sign in. I hope if you haven't done that, please go do that. I want to be very frank with you. The committee that put this together, we're going to sort out everybody on the list by county of residents. And then we'd like to start sending you some of the materials that will help you in your decisions as you begin to, as he just mentioned, as you begin to rise up here and there and so forth. Because that's what it's going to take. But we'd just want to help you do that. So we'd like to be able to communicate and send out the information, just places where you can go and learn about principles of freedom and so forth. So watch for that. Please sign up if you haven't yet. And let's say we become humble and strive with all our hearts to fulfill the great promises that Guy just laid out for us. What a wonderful thing if we can do that. When my wife and children and I moved here in August of 2003, almost immediately I felt a wonderful feeling here, a draw here. There's just something about the area that has blended perfectly with my own concepts of freedom and liberty, and I've had to learn most of this. I was pretty much a blank slate coming in, but it's a great area to be if you think about this region here. There are very few places in the world where people speak so openly of liberty and of their Creator God. God bless you all. We'll now have our closing prayer by Mr. Brady Price.
Dear Heavenly Father, we gathered together as families and as individuals humbly ask at this time as we separate that we might remember the feeling, the thoughts that have come to us as the speakers have shared with us and have borne their testimony of liberty, as we have witnessed patriots giving of themselves and sacrificing for our benefit. May thy Spirit be with us, that as we continue to seek thy will for us individually and as families and as communities, that we might be blessed, that we might meet together again to share in the successes that we will have. This is our prayer. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.